The house that remembered. The first thing everyone noticed about the house was that it had too many windows. From the outside, the old Victorian home looked ordinary enough. It sat at the end of Hollow Creek Road, surrounded by dead trees and an iron fence that leaned toward the ground as if it had grown tired of standing. The paint had peeled away years ago, the roof sagged slightly in the middle, and vines covered most of the brick foundation. But the windows were wrong. There were dozens of them. Windows on the second floor, windows in the attic, narrow windows along the side walls where no rooms appeared to exist, small square windows near the ground that seemed too low for anyone to look through. Neighbors claimed the house changed. Some said a window would appear overnight. Others said one would disappear. Nobody had lived there for nearly 20 years. At least nobody living. When Daniel Vale purchased the house, he didn't believe the rumors. He was a restoration contractor, and old houses were his specialty. He had repaired abandoned mansions, rebuilt collapsed barns, and renovated buildings that looked like they should have been demolished decades ago. The Hollow Creek house was simply another project. A big one. A profitable one. The previous owner had died without family, and the property had been sitting untouched ever since. The price was low enough that Daniel knew there had to be problems, but he assumed those problems were things like plumbing, wiring, and termites. Not ghosts, not curses, not impossible rooms. The first strange thing happened on his second night. Daniel was lying in bed upstairs when he heard someone walking across the hallway. Slow footsteps. Back and forth. Back and forth. He opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling. The house was empty. He knew that. He had checked every room before going to sleep. The footsteps continued. Finally, he grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the hallway. Hello. The walking stopped. Silence filled the house. Daniel waited. Then a voice whispered from the darkness at the end of the hallway. Don't open the door. Daniel froze. At the end of the hallway was a door he had never seen before. It was tall and narrow, painted black with no handle. He had walked past that section of wall earlier that day. There had been nothing there. The flashlight in his hand flickered. Once, twice, then went out. Daniel stood in complete darkness. And from behind the black door came 3 knocks. Slow, heavy, patient. Knock, knock, knock. The next morning, Daniel convinced himself he had been exhausted. Old houses made strange noises. Wood expanded. Pipes shifted. Wind moved through cracks. That was all. Except the black door was still there. He touched the wall around it. The paint was old. The wood was real. It wasn't a hallucination. He called his friend Marcus, who worked in construction and had helped him with previous projects. Tell me you didn't buy the Hollow Creek house, Marcus said when he answered. Daniel laughed. You've heard the stories too. Everyone has. They're just stories. A pause. Then Marcus said, my grandfather used to tell me about that place. Daniel looked at the black door. What did he say? He said the house doesn't haunt people. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? It remembers them. Marcus came over that afternoon. The 2 men searched the house from top to bottom. They found strange things. A child's room with faded wallpaper covered in drawings. A library filled with books that had no titles. A basement door that opened to a brick wall. And upstairs, they discovered something impossible. A hallway behind the attic. The hallway stretched farther than the outside dimensions of the house allowed. Marcus measured it 3 times. The math didn't make sense. This place is bigger inside, he whispered. Daniel tried to laugh, but neither of them found it funny. At the end of the hallway was a room. Inside was a table. On the table were photographs. Hundreds of them. Every photograph showed someone standing in the house. Some pictures were old. Some were recent. Too recent. Daniel picked one up. His stomach tightened. It showed him, standing in the kitchen, holding the photograph. The picture had been taken only moments before. Marcus grabbed another. His face went pale. It showed Marcus walking into the house earlier that day. Daniel. The sound of a door closing echoed behind them. They turned. The hallway was empty, but the photographs on the table had changed. Now every picture showed the two of them looking toward the camera. And in every picture, someone stood behind them. A tall figure, its face blurred, its hand resting on their shoulders. They left immediately. For 3 days, Daniel refused to return. He stayed at a hotel and ignored every call from the real estate agent. But something bothered him. The photographs. The house wasn't simply haunted. It was collecting memories. And Daniel needed to know why. On the 4th day, he returned. This time, he brought equipment. Cameras, recorders, motion sensors. He wanted proof. Not for money. Not for fame. For himself. Because deep down, he knew the house was waiting. The first recording was discovered an hour after he entered. The camera showed Daniel walking through the kitchen. Then the screen went black. A few seconds later, the camera turned back on. Daniel was still in the kitchen, but he was no longer alone. Standing behind him was a woman wearing a white dress. Her hair covered her face. Daniel didn't notice. The video continued. The woman slowly lifted her head and whispered, "He forgot us." The recording ended. Daniel searched the house for answers. In the library, he found an old journal hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The journal belonged to Elena Voss, the woman who built the house in 1892. The first pages were normal. She wrote about construction, her family, her children. Then the entries changed. The house has begun making rooms that I did not design. The children say they hear voices calling their names. The walls know things we never told them. I thought I built a home. I built a mouth. Daniel turned the page. The final entry was written in shaky handwriting. If you find this journal, do not search for the missing rooms. They are not missing. They are waiting. Daniel heard movement behind him. A child's voice. "Are you looking for us?" He slowly turned. A little girl stood near the doorway. She looked about 8 years old. Her clothes were old-fashioned. Her eyes were completely black. Daniel couldn't move. "Who are you?" The girl smiled. "We lived here. What happened to you?" The girl looked around the room. "The house kept us." She told him the story. The Voss family had been wealthy and respected. But after strange events began happening, they discovered the house was changing. Rooms appeared. Doors led to places that didn't exist. People heard voices from empty rooms. Then one night, the family disappeared. No bodies. No evidence. Nothing. The town assumed they left. But the house remembered them. And every person who entered afterward became part of its collection. Daniel stared at the girl. "Why are you telling me this?" Her smile faded. "Because you're already inside." The lights went out. The girl vanished. Daniel ran toward the front door. It wouldn't open. He pulled harder. Nothing. He tried the windows. They showed different places. One window showed the street outside. Another showed a forest. Another showed a room filled with people staring back at him. The house had changed. Again, Daniel wandered through the halls, searching for a way out. Every room contained pieces of other people's lives. A kitchen where an old man sat frozen at a table. A bedroom where a woman slept beneath blankets that moved with no wind. A living room filled with photographs. The people weren't dead. Not exactly. They were memories. The house had trapped moments of them, forever repeating. Then Daniel found Marcus. He was standing in a hallway, not moving, not speaking, just staring at a wall. Marcus. His friend turned slowly. His eyes were filled with fear. You came back. Daniel grabbed his arm. We're leaving. Marcus didn't move. I tried. What do you mean? Marcus pointed at the wall. Carved into the wood were hundreds of names. Thousands. Daniel moved closer. At the bottom was a fresh name. His own. Daniel Vale. Next to it was a blank space. Waiting. The black door appeared again. This time it was open. Behind it was a room filled with photographs. The tall figure stood inside. Daniel finally saw its face. It had no face, only smooth, empty skin. A person shaped like a person. A collection of everyone the house had taken. You're the house, Daniel whispered. The figure tilted its head. No. Its voice sounded like many voices speaking together. I am what the house remembers. The figure explained the truth. The house was never built to trap people. It was built to preserve them. Every person who entered left behind memories. The house collected those memories. But over time, it learned something. Memories fade. People forget. The house hated being forgotten. So it began keeping people instead. Daniel looked at the photographs. All those lives. All those moments. All those trapped souls. How do I free them? The figure was silent. Then it pointed toward the center of the room. A single photograph sat there. Daniel picked it up. It showed him standing outside the house as a child. He had never been there before. But he remembered. A forgotten memory. A day he had visited the house years ago. A day he had forgotten. The house had known him before he knew it. You were always coming back, the figure said. Daniel realized the only way to escape was to destroy the thing keeping the house alive. Not the walls. Not the rooms. The memories. He gathered every photograph he could find. Every journal. Every recording. Every piece of evidence. The house fought back. Hallways twisted. Doors moved. Voices screamed from every room. But Daniel kept going. Because the house's greatest weakness was the same thing that made it powerful. It remembered everything, including pain, including loneliness, including every person it had taken. Daniel placed the photographs in the fireplace. The flames rose. The house shook. The windows began disappearing. One by one, the trapped memories began fading. The girl from the library appeared. Will we be forgotten? Daniel looked at her. No. The girl smiled. That's all we wanted. The house collapsed at sunrise. When firefighters arrived, they found Daniel sitting outside in the grass. The entire building was gone. Not burned. Not destroyed. Gone. Only the foundation remained. When investigators searched the area, they found no explanation. No records of the Voss family. No proof the house ever existed. Except for one thing. A single photograph was discovered in the dirt. It showed the destroyed house. Standing in front of it was Daniel. Beside him were dozens of people, the ones who had been trapped. Everyone was smiling. Everyone except one person. Standing in the upstairs window was the faceless figure. Watching. Waiting. Years later, people still told stories about Hollow Creek Road. They said the house was gone. They said it could never return. But sometimes, late at night, drivers passing through the area noticed something strange. A house at the end of the road. A house with too many windows. And if they looked closely enough, they would see one new window appear, waiting for someone to remember it.